Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts discussion number 424 here. Gleba Pentapod enemy. So we finally get some enemy information here, and I am excited, but also like real creeped out. This is not a fan. Not in a way like they did a bad job, but in a way like they did a really good job at making them really bad. You'll see. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother you. But man, if you're like me, and I am not. Well, I don't want to really spoil it, but you'll see here shortly. So, yeah, let's go ahead and start. So, it is time. Stompy time. If you don't want spoilers on enemies and want to discover them naturally, then you might want to skip this one. So, yeah, although the picture for this on the website like already shows the enemies, so so much for no spoilers. But anyway, a trumpeting scream quite quiets all the small animals. I think you hear the breaking of waves followed by stomping, earth-shaking steps that are getting louder and louder. Looking in the direction of the sound, you see a cliff rising to a tall hill. The fungus at the top shakes a little with each stomp, but the source is somewhere further behind the hill. You ready your weapons, but the sound stops getting louder and instead moves to the right, then gradually fades in the distance. Whatever it was big. After climbing the hill to investigate, you see a valley on the other side. Some large translucent green eggs float on a raft of slimy foam in a pool of shallow water. You get closer, the eggs are soft like jelly, the portion above water sagging under their own weight. In the center is a dark, blurry mass of tangled limbs and eyes. Wonderful. So we have a video here, and then this basically kind of goes into what the video shows. So I'm going to watch the video instead because this is a pretty long one. So we are going to attempt to watch this on YouTube at 4K. And we're just going to hop in here. I'm going to put on my headphones so I can hear it along with you, and we'll get started. We might as well actually go make sure we're in 4K because we currently are not. And just great, yeah. Okay, so I might have to nope out of this. We'll see. Nice, nice, bro. It's already buffered. Okay, I apologize. I guess 4K is not an option. I mean, it's buffered and everything, but I guess we don't get that. Oh god. Honestly, I think it's the... Oh, jeez. Ah, hell no. Oh my gosh, guys, this is... Oh man, I am, like I said, I'm not really, thrilled by that. Again, not like they actually did a really great job. I mean, genuinely, I am excited, but man, I do kind of have like a bit of arachnophobia, and I just dislike bugs in general, and just like especially that medium-sized one. The way that moves creeps me out so much. It's very much to similar to the Spidertron movement. So I'm sure in game once I have like weapons that will just obliterate them, I'm going to be a much happier camper, and it probably won't be so bad. But man, this definitely creeps me out. If you have kind of some sort of fear of bugs or anything, probably same for you. But they did do an amazing job. I really like how different they seem from like biters, right? Their movement is different. The combat where they're like shooting like these little like homing bugs at you, and they seem pretty good at like strafing and stuff, and avoiding and like trying to kind of like avoid your movements and such. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. Now there is more to read, so let's go ahead and go down here. So this kind of basically is just a word version, a bit more. Um, it's really well written. So if you do want to read this, I definitely recommend it. But this basically goes through what the video just showed, more elegant maybe in a way, like it's very nicely written here. But so we go through that, and yeah, so there are names for these which we go into. So strafers, which I think are the medium ones, and then the stompers are the big ones, and then the I forget what they call the other ones, like swimmers or flyers or something. I think they say farther down. But yeah, it's a duel to the death. While continuing to dodge its feet, you make your way to a large area of land to make a last stand. No more rockets, gun ammo, so time for flamethrower to shine. As you circle each other, you douse the area in flames. The dance continues in flames until one of you falls. More fire, more spinning, more fire. The world becomes a hazy blur of flames, smoke, and death. So it seems like flamethrowers are going to be the go-to thing here. I do also think that the Tesla turrets are actually going to be really good, just because it seems like the smaller enemies can swarm pretty easily. Like, you can get overwhelmed, and those do have that splash damage and like the electrical jumps. So I think that could be really good too. But what I know is I'm not coming here until I have really good weaponry and defenses, because this looks terrifying. So let's get into the actual mechanics of this, which are quite interesting. So the new enemies on Gleba are pentapods, five-legged creatures. They are based on distant relatives of starfish or sea stars, so sometimes we call them starfish. Land stars are starfeet mostly, though we call them by their most common forms, stompers, strafers, wrigglers, were the other ones. When you first encounter the pentapods, it could be that you rushed to space, went straight to Gleba, and are weak in combat. At the other end of the spectrum, this could be your third new planet, and you could have spent a long time investing in military technology, including new weapons from other planets. This range of combat capability makes it difficult to choose a good starting threat level for the enemies. For now, we are going for a threat level that makes the starting evolutions difficult if you are completely unprepared, but still survivable if you have standard equipment, even if it's lacking in damage upgrades. Which seems like a good decision. You don't want it to be near impossible, but also you definitely don't want it to be, too easy, like a walk in the park or anything, even with just standard military equipment. Also, if you're completely unprepared, that just means the enemies are difficult to take down on your own. But then an engineer with a pocket full of turrets is never solo. I like that. One of the reasons we can risk the pentapod enemies starting with better combat capabilities than biters is because they are fairly passive. So this is also an interesting mechanic where it basically, they act like similar to how peaceful mode acts, in the sense where they defend their nest and attack if you attack a nearby ally, but otherwise it will leave you alone. So they won't actually send out attack parties like the biters will. But if you get near their nests or actually attack them, then of course they will go on the offensive. And then the other thing too that's interesting, if you do fight them and win, they will evolve. So, I mean, I guess really this is maybe just a like more lengthy way of saying that if you like kill the spawners, they evolve just like biters do. But still, this is good to keep in mind, because there are different evolution levels of them, which we'll get into here shortly. So pollution. The pollution on Gleba is different. Basically just due to, its high CO2 content in the environment and the fungi, eating up normal pollution, that's not really a factor. However, Gleba's pollution mechanics is based on aroma and spores. The fungi that you need to grow, harvest, and process are the same ones that the enemies eat. The agriculture activities make spores and smells that eventually track the pentapods. Also, as with noise pollution, the effect does cause the local enemies to evolve as they're exposed to your agricultural growth formula and meddling ways. So basically, they're hungry and you're producing things that they want to eat. And yeah, so like they hear the dinner bell, the lunch bell, and they come running to eat your factory and everything is making. But yeah, I like how they changed this too. I like how You know, really, it's just a color thing, I think. But you know, it's these nice details. You know, it kind of matches the environment. It seems more, you know, aroma, spores type of smell rather than red like the pollution. I just really like these little details that help it blend in more. So the actual mechanics with the enemy. So Agraphs. So Agraphs are the Pentapod equivalent of spawners. They only appear in shallow waters of various global marshlands, which both you and your enemies can wade through. This keeps them away from the drier highland areas, which are easier to build in, but puts them close to areas where you want to harvest your agricultural projects. So you will have to interact with them. And then this part's really interesting, and I think this is where there's going to be the most controversy here. Destroying an agraft will yield some of the pentapod eggs it contains. Pentapod eggs are a key ingredient needed to make the biochamber, an important bioprocessing machine on Gleba. Make sure to use the eggs quickly, though. Like many biological items in Gleba, they are on a timer. However, they don't spoil in the normal way. Way too long, you might find yourself face to face with hungry hatching pentapods. Oh my gosh. So basically, if you don't use these eggs fast enough, they're just gonna hatch in your inventory and you'll just be like, you know, walking along or working on something. And if they like quote unquote spoil, then basically you'll just have bugs in these things like all over you attacking you randomly, which I think is pretty fun actually. I really like this mechanic. I think it's a really interesting different way to go about things. The part I was referring to that would be controversial is the fact that the eggs are required to make a biochamber. So this brings up several things. First off, if you play long enough, you'll remember alien artifacts and how they used to be used in science. This, I would say generally the community was not a fan of this. However, I'm not really upset by this at all because this is a very different thing. You know, they're used in a building, they're not used in science here. So naturally, I think you're going to need a lot less of them. They do say you will need quite a few biochambers in your time on Gleba, but I still, like, I don't think it's going to really be any amount close to the amount of alien artifacts we needed back in the day. You know, because that was used for like really late game science stuff. This is just for making buildings. Now the other question though is how is this going to work with peaceful or no enemies, right? So if you turn off enemies, you know, because you can do that at least now, how's this going to work? Like, are you going to just not be able to make biochambers and like not proceed, or is it going to be replaced with something else or some other way to get it? I would hope they have taken this into account in some way. They didn't mention this though, so very curious how that's going to be handled. You'll need quite a few yeah. So more importantly though, Gleba might need more biochambers when you're not there, which is interesting. I'm not 100% sure what this means, but yeah, very, very interesting. So of course, just automate everything with a bit of technology. You can turn a limited egg supply into a fully automated but somewhat risky production cycle. So you can turn this into some sort of automated thing, although risky because I think if the eggs like go bad or whatever, or they hatch really, then your base is going to be full of enemies crawling on your production lines and eating everything. So that's also a really interesting mechanic. You know, you may need to actually put defenses around the production for this, just in case something gets clogged up and the eggs hatch, and then these guys are all over your stuff. Now these guys I don't mind. These guys are actually pretty cute, to be honest. I like them. It's the other ones, these next ones that are the worst. The big ones aren't too bad for me either, but oh man. Wrigglers are not very threatening individually. The damage from their claws is reasonable, but they're very fragile and tend to die quickly to most weapons in your arsenal. Their true advantage is in overwhelming numbers. Both Stompers and Strafers can deliver newborn Wrigglers straight to you when you are faced with a large threat like a Stomper. It is easy to overlook the steady accumulation of seemingly weak Wrigglers, and then before long they become a very viciously deadly horde. So I don't know if you noticed in the video, Arendelle did say this in this text, which I didn't read, but if you notice, the Strafers are actually shooting these Wrigglers like out of the top of their head as like they're attacking their combat tactic, right? So just if you didn't notice that's where they were coming from. Yeah, so they actually use these as like projectiles, which is kind of crazy. But then we move into these horrible things. Good God, I truly, like, this actually makes me very uncomfortable. So I'm gonna just not look at that. Okay, I'll let you guys look at it, and I'm gonna look away. Man, there's like 50 eyes on that thing too. All right, I'm looking down. This one don't really bother me. Because of the shell, you can't see the eyes and stuff like that. But yeah, so Strafers are fairly fragile, but use range and speed to outmaneuver opponents. They launch, and this again is for the ones above that I don't want to look at. They launch flying wrigglers at the target like a homing missile. When a flying wriggler hits the target, it falls to the ground, becoming a normal wriggler ready to keep attacking. They keep their target at a distance and circle it. They outrange the gun and laser turret, which is a very good thing to note, so you will need to consider this in your defenses. If you place a single turret, then a Strafer will be able to destroy it with no consequence. However, if you make a large area of turrets, then the Strafer will try to circle the one turret it is fixed on. While doing so, will probably wander into range of another turret. When they take damage, they will try to back away, but they can't change direction instantly, so if they go into a range of some turrets, they might not make it back out. Ideally, you want weapons with long range and or high alpha strike, like the rocket turret, which is unlocked on Gleba, so that's good to know, or the Tesla turret from Fulgara. Yeah, so Tesla turret I think is definitely going to be a go-to. We did find out not last Friday Facts, but the one where the Tesla turret was revealed that it does have higher range than a laser. Rockets would also be good. Now, this does bring up several other interesting points. So, like, if the rocket turret is unlocked on Gleba, but you ideally would want rocket turrets on your space platform to help you get through like the large asteroids you encounter. Um, that is a potential argument to go to Gleba first. Of course, if you're unprepared, you can have a very bad time. Um, yeah, I'm really curious. Actually, this is making the decision a bit harder because yeah, I mean the rocket turret is pretty dang good, and it could also help you just traverse through space without getting your platform damaged. But definitely some choices to be made there. The Stompers, as you can see, are extremely tough, but they're also pretty slow and can take a lot of damage. They have a short range spit attack. Their primary attack is stomping prey with their feet, so the foot does a lot of damage with direct hit, but there's also an AoE effect to it, which is pretty interesting. This splash damage means that densely packed defenses take more damage, so sparse networks of defenses are more resilient to their attacks. So you will have to do some pretty, strategic placement of your defenses to combat both these guys and the ones above. I think it's going to be really interesting figuring out like a good defense setup for this. And then when it's killed, the young wrigglers it protects under its shell are released as new opponents. That's great. So the Stompers and Strafers can both walk over walls and cliffs. Walling yourself in is not an effective strategy on Gleba. The wrigglers can't bypass walls once they're on the ground, but they don't help when they can be thrown over the wall by Strafers or delivered inside a Stomper. Yeah, so this is interesting. Basically, walls are going to be ineffective here. I mean, honestly, I think maybe we just should wait till nukes till we get here. That sounds like the safest bet to me. This sounds pretty terrifying. But I do really like how they differentiated them from biters. I mean, this is a very different situation than dealing with biters, in my opinion. And then they obviously look different too, but the mechanics are quite different as well. And this is going to be interesting. Now, there's even more to find out here. There is design. I don't want to spend like 40 minutes on this video, but Arendelle does go into the design process of this, which is, again, very interesting. I did read all this prior to the video, and I do recommend you guys check this out if you haven't, but we can kind of just do some skimming here. So there are a lot of different ways you could go with a leggy enemy. I guess it is important, so we should read this. This is important to note here. So Albert imposed some initial constraints there for the enemies that Arendelle had to design. There should not be anything with fur, and then there should be no vertebrates. My first few designs covered a wide range of directions, so next he added the constraint that things shouldn't get too alien. So that puts us in the range of designs that approximately look like they could have evolved from Earth creature thousands or millions of years ago. That's still a huge range of options, though nature can be freaky, yeah, which is very true, right? Just look in the ocean, all the stuff in there. So that is important to note that, they did have some of these constraints. Interesting they didn't want anything with fur. I guess maybe for this particular environment or just in general, they don't want that in the game. But this is pretty interesting. I actually don't mind these in terms of, like, I think the design is pretty good. But this is before they settle on the starfish ancestry. And then, yeah, so basically based on sea stars, terrifying. This is pretty interesting, though. So the wings are based on some sorts of holes. So you can see This is a generalized anatomy of Gleba enemies. So this is the harder shell, nerve, vein. The mouth is actually on the bottom, which is interesting. The heart's over here. Eggs, lungs, wing spit muscles, yeah, for like shooting the enemies. The ejector, the head plate, and then the eyes, and then the brain. This is, yeah, kind of gross, but very interesting to see this. We've never actually seen anything like this for biters, so I really like how they did this. Now these, I mean, yeah, these guys are kind of cute, I think. Early flyer missile concept. In the lore for these creatures, their behavior, egg incubation strategy, and global population control is linked to them being very tribal creatures, where nearby unrelated tribes are considered to be enemies competing for resources. It would be nice to be able to have all that simulated in the game, but doing so would be terrible for performance and not improve gameplay, so you'll just have to imagine that. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like that would be a huge tax on performance, and probably you wouldn't even, like, notice it most of the time, so I think they made a good decision to not do that. Yeah, so there's two variants of these. There's the wrigglers, which these guys, I guess, turn into when they land, and then these are the actual projectiles, these horrible creatures, and then this guy here. I was thinking people mentioned, like, plushies. I wouldn't mind a plushie of this, but no way in heck with this. Concept art for Gleba family. Initially, we're going for more of a transparent look, but they ran into some challenges with layering problems caused by transparent overlap sprites. So instead, they went to rougher shells and rubbery bodies. So Arendelle created a concept art for all Gleba enemies, egg, wrath spawners, and spawning foam with input from Albert and V. And then towards the end of the concept phase, I made 3D sculptures of Stomper and Strafer, which were close to final versions. From there, Firgal took these sculptures, added their finer details and texturing, then cut them up for rigging. And yeah, so they basically did say that they were hoping it could kind of be done in the same way as the Spidertron legs, since that already existed in the game. You know, it would make it a little easier for them. But the legs are thicker and move over a wider range of angles, so it became definitely trickier. The Wriggler uses classic sprite sheets like biters, so in most of the ways, the process is simpler, but it does require some hand animation instead of procedural animation. For these, Firgo gave the models to Jersey so that he could bring them to life with their iconic wriggles. And then, as usual, sound effects were done by Ian and music by Petter. Even though the intention was to just use the systems we already had, they uncovered a range of problems with the old animation systems along the way. Inevitably, more work was required on the late enemy Spidertron systems to get them working well for this use case, which does kind of explain maybe why it took so long to get a preview on this. It sounds like a lot of work. Thanks to a lot of upgrades by Strangepan, we can now have these wonderful creatures and some Spidertron improvements too, which is, you know, a great side outcome from this. However, maybe they mention it here. So the enemies are still subject to change, and some things are still missing, like final sound effects or larger versions. We also have more combat balancing to do, so the combat can be interesting in the right ways and not punishing. Right now, they are fun to fight, especially if you're slightly underpowered, because it feels like your active movement and target priority matter more. They certainly feel very different from biters. At the moment, there are 3 tiers of Pentapod. The combat video only shows the green small tier, which are much weaker. The largest tier are especially devastating, but at least in most cases, they only tramp your agriculture area, not your main processing area, so it's easy to recover. Okay, so you're telling me that this thing, which, by the way, is not even close to small. Like, if we look when this comes into the picture here, I mean, look how, so this is the player, this is the thing, right? It's pretty big, and this is the smaller version. So the green are the weakest and smallest. I am really interested to see what the biggest, I think they said is red, looks like. I mean, I'm kind of excited. Like, man, if this thing is like the size of this screen when it's fully evolved, that's going to be pretty cool. That's going to be crazy. I'm really hoping for that. I think that would just be, like, it would just add another layer of difference, and just, yeah, I think that would be pretty neat. Now, obviously, they're probably going to have some constraints with, like, what they can render, performance, all that, what works, but I hope it scales up pretty big, just because, you know, not only would it look cool and terrifying, but it could, you know, definitely do some serious damage if it's that large. But that is the Friday Facts. I'm really interested what you guys have to say about this and what you guys think. Are you a fan? Are you creeped out by this? Do you love it? Do you like the way they implemented it? Your thoughts with the combat, all of that. Yeah, okay, so it goes green, gold, and red, and all we saw were the green ones. And I'm trying to think. I think that's it. I don't think there were any other spoilers of like anything else I missed. They didn't really show anything aside from the enemies. We did get like a better look at the environment of Gleba though, which is pretty neat. Definitely want to be careful as you venture out towards these like shallows because that's where all this stuff is going to be. But I'm really excited for this. Like I know I am creeped out legitimately by especially the strafers, but I do really like this approach to the combat and the enemies, how it's different. And this makes me even more excited too for what enemies are going to be on Volcanus and Aquello. I think it is going to be the last planet because yeah, I'm really curious how they're going to go about that. But that's going to do it for me for this one. As always, please leave your thoughts down below. Really love reading, especially in regards to like this stuff. I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see what you all think with this. And if you did enjoy and are excited, definitely drop a like. If you're as terrified as I am, drop a like for that too. And if you're new and not subscribed already, feel free to keep up with all future content. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.